The storm came suddenly, sweeping across the countryside like a living thing. Daniel clutched his coat tighter against the rain, his boots sinking into the muddy road with each step. He had been walking for hours, trying to reach the next village before nightfall, but the storm had other plans. The sky cracked with lightning, and the sound of thunder rolled across the hills like the growl of something ancient and angry. Through the sheets of rain, he saw it, a silhouette on the ridge ahead, tall and looming. At first, he thought it was a barn or an old church. But as he drew closer, the shape revealed itself as a mansion, its roof pitched high, its windows tall and narrow. The sign at the rusted gate swung in the wind, the words barely visible, Blackwood Manor. Daniel hesitated. He had heard rumours about this place in the last village he passed. Something about disappearances, strange lights at night, and an owner who had died decades ago, but was said to still roam the halls. But the rain soaked him to the bone, and the chill seeped into his very bones. A warm fire and shelter outweighed superstition. He pushed open the gate, the iron hinges screaming like a warning. The path to the house was lined with dead trees, their branches clawing at the air. The windows of the manor reflected the flashes of lightning, giving the impression of eyes that watched him approach. When he reached the massive front door, he found it already ajar. The storm had pushed it open, or perhaps something inside had left it that way. Daniel stepped into the entry hall. The air was stale, carrying the faint scent of mildew and dust. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Despite the decay, there was still a strange grandeur here, the sweeping staircase that rose to the second floor, the cracked chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling, and the faded wallpaper patterned with roses that seemed to wilt in the dim light. "Hello?" Daniel called, his voice small against the vast silence. "Is anyone here?" Only the storm answered, rumbling outside. He moved deeper into the house. His hand brushed against a table in the hallway, and his fingers came away dusty. No one had lived here for years, that much was clear, and yet he felt watched. The air held a weight, as if the house itself was holding its breath. He found the drawing room, where a fireplace stood cold and empty. To his surprise, a stack of wood waited neatly beside it. Striking a match from his pack, Daniel lit a fire, and the room glowed with warmth for the first time in who knew how long. He sank into one of the high-backed chairs, dripping and exhausted. The flames crackled, and for a while he allowed himself to relax. But then he noticed something. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a row of portraits. They were stiff oil paintings of the Blackwood family, if he had to guess. There was a stern man with hollow eyes, a woman with a sharp jaw and an expression of disdain, and several children, their faces pale and solemn. But what unsettled him most was the last painting on the right. It was a young man, dark hair, sharp features, and piercing eyes that seemed alive even through paint. The plaque beneath read, "Nathaniel Blackwood, 1894, 1912. Daniel frowned. 17 years old, such a short life. But the longer he stared, the more he felt as if the painted eyes were staring back, unblinking, aware. He looked away, telling himself it was just his imagination. When he glanced back a moment later, he froze. The expression in the painting had changed. It was subtle, but undeniable. The lips had curved into the faintest smile, and the eyes glittered with something sharp, something mocking. Daniel's skin prickled with cold sweat. He stood quickly, nearly knocking over the chair. The fire cracked behind him, throwing shadows across the room. He shook his head. "I'm tired, that's all. Just tired." But when he turned toward the doorway, he saw it. A figure, tall and dark, standing just beyond the threshold. Daniel's breath caught. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It stood perfectly still, its face hidden in shadow. He blinked, and it was gone. The hallway was empty. His heart hammered. He backed toward the fire, the warmth suddenly feeling like a fragile shield against the cold expanse of the house. Every instinct told him to leave, storm or no storm. But curiosity rooted him in place. He moved cautiously into the hallway. His boots creaked on the wooden floor, and every sound seemed too loud in the silence. He passed by a cracked mirror on the wall and caught his reflection only. For a heartbeat, it wasn't his reflection at all. The face staring back at him was pale, with hollow eyes and a cruel smile. Daniel stumbled back, colliding with the wall. When he looked again, it was only his own frightened face staring back. He needed to get out. He turned toward the front door, but as he reached the entry hall, his stomach dropped. The door was no longer ajar. It was shut tight. The iron bolts slid firmly into place, as if locked from the outside. Panic surged through him. He tried the handle, pulling and shaking, but it didn't budge, trapped. A whisper drifted through the house, soft, almost musical, but unmistakable. "Stay!" Daniel spun, his breath sharp in his throat. The voice came from upstairs, from the shadows at the top of the sweeping staircase. He squinted, and for a moment he thought he saw a pale figure standing there. Then lightning flashed, and the staircase was empty. The whisper came again, this time from behind him. "Stay! With us!" Daniel's skin crawled. He backed into the entry hall, eyes darting. The portraits on the walls seemed closer, their eyes following his every move. The firelight from the drawing room flickered wildly, as though disturbed by an unseen presence. Then he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy, coming down the staircase. He couldn't see anyone there, but the sound grew louder, closer. And then they stopped, right behind him. Daniel froze. He didn't dare turn around. The air at his back grew icy cold, and the whisper tickled his ear. "You're the last guest, Daniel." His blood turned to ice. How did it know his name? Lightning flashed again, and the house seemed to breathe. Daniel's throat went dry. The whisper still echoed in his ear, as if whoever or whatever had spoken was standing just behind him, breathing into his skin. He spun around, heart hammering, but the entry hall was empty. The staircase loomed above him, shadows stretching long across the walls. His mind screamed at him to run, to pound on the door until it gave way, but his body refused to obey. It was as though the house itself held him in place, its rotten heart beating in time with his own. Finally, his legs moved, carrying him back into the drawing room where the fire still burned. The warmth wrapped around him, but he could not shake the chill that had sunk into his bones. He sank into the chair again, trying to calm his breathing. That was when he noticed the book. It lay on the table beside him, thick with dust, its leather cover cracked with age. He hadn't seen it before. With trembling fingers, he opened it. The handwriting was elegant, looping, and old-fashioned. It was a journal. October 3rd, 1912. Nathaniel grows restless. He wanders the halls at night, whispering to shadows. The doctor says it is fever, but I know it is something else. He looks at me with eyes that are not his own. Daniel's stomach twisted. Nathaniel, the boy from the portrait. He turned the page. October 14th. The house has changed. We hear footsteps where none should be, voices in the walls. The servants whisper of curses. Last night the fire went cold, though the wood still burned. Nathaniel laughed when it happened. Thunder shook the house, rattling the windows. Daniel swallowed hard and read on. October 20th. My son is gone. The body we buried was not him. I see him still, walking the corridors, smiling at me through the glass. This place is no longer ours. Blackwood Manor belongs to them now. The handwriting stopped abruptly. The ink smeared as though the pen had been torn from the writer's hand. Daniel snapped the book shut. His hands shook. Every word felt heavy, true, alive. He looked up at the portrait of Nathaniel again, lit by the flickering firelight. The painted boy was smiling wider now. "Stop," Daniel whispered, his voice cracking. "Stop it." The air shifted. A draft swept through the room, though no windows were open. The flames in the fireplace sputtered, then roared higher, throwing grotesque shadows on the walls. From somewhere deep in the house came a sound laughter, childlike, mocking, echoing through the halls. Daniel stood. His skin crawled with the need to move, to find another way out. He stumbled into the hallway again, this time turning toward a set of doors at the back of the manor. He pushed them open and found himself in a grand dining hall. A long table stretched the length of the room, set with silverware tarnished by time, goblets coated in dust, and plates cracked with age. But what made Daniel's breath catch was the sight of the chairs. They were not empty. Figures sat around the table, slumped forward or sitting stiffly upright. Their faces were grey and sunken, their skin paper-thin and stretched tight over bones. Cobwebs clung to their shoulders. Some had empty eye sockets, others had jaws that hung open in a permanent scream. Daniel gagged, stumbling backward, but then he realised something even worse. They weren't statues, they weren't mannequins, they were corpses. And as lightning flashed through the high windows, he saw movement. Fingers twitching, heads turning ever so slightly in his direction. A voice broke the silence, raspy and hollow. "You're late for dinner?" Daniel bolted. He ran back into the hallway, his boots slipping on the dust-covered floor. The sound of chairs scraping followed him, slow but steady. The dead had risen. He darted up the sweeping staircase 2 steps at a time, lungs burning, ears ringing with the sound of whispers and shuffling feet behind him. He reached the landing, heart pounding, and chose the first door he saw. It opened into a bedroom. The air was colder here, almost unbearable. The canopy bed was draped with moth-eaten curtains, and the walls were lined with shelves of books swollen with damp. On the dresser sat a cracked mirror. Daniel caught his reflection in it and froze. It wasn't his face staring back. It was Nathaniel's. The same dark hair, the same sharp features, the same mocking smile. "No," Daniel whispered, stumbling back. "That's not me." The reflection's lips moved, though Daniel hadn't spoken. "You are one of us now." The glass cracked down the middle with a deafening sound. Daniel stumbled to the door, fumbling with the handle, but it wouldn't turn. The whispers in the room grew louder, swirling around him, filling his ears, crawling into his mind. "Stay, stay, stay." He pounded on the door. "Let me out!" Suddenly, the whispers stopped. Silence pressed in. The handle turned easily under his hand, and the door swung open. The hallway was empty. Daniel staggered out, shaking, sweat cold on his skin. He moved down the corridor, desperate for another exit, any exit. That was when he saw another door slightly ajar. Light spilled from within, warm and golden. It looked inviting, safe. He pushed it open. Inside was a study, neat and tidy, as though untouched by time. A fire burned in the hearth, an armchair faced it, and in that chair sat a man in an old-fashioned suit, a book resting on his lap. Relief washed over Daniel, a living person, someone else trapped here perhaps. "Thank God," he whispered. "Please, you have to help me. I can't find my way out." The man closed the book and turned his head slowly toward Daniel. His eyes were pale, glassy, and unblinking. "You've already found your way," the man said. His voice was calm, almost kind. "You're home." Daniel's heart clenched. No, I'm not." The man stood. His movements were stiff, unnatural, as though his limbs were being pulled by strings. He smiled, but it was hollow, empty. "Dinner is ready, Daniel." The fire roared behind him, the shadows stretching long and thin, wrapping the room in darkness. Daniel stumbled back from the man in the study, his breath sharp and ragged. The words "dinner is ready" echoed in his mind like a death sentence. "No," Daniel whispered, shaking his head. "I'm not supposed to be here. I'm leaving." But the man simply tilted his head, pale eyes glimmering in the firelight. "Leaving? No one leaves Blackwood Manor. We are all guests here, forever." The floor creaked behind Daniel. He turned just enough to see shadows shifting in the hallway, shapes gathering, thin, twisted figures pressing close, whispering, reaching with skeletal hands. He bolted into the corridor, slamming the study door behind him. His boots pounded against the wooden floor as he ran blindly, twisting through endless hallways that seemed to shift and stretch, never ending. The house was a maze, and he was its prey. Finally, he stumbled into a small room, slamming the door shut and pressing his back against it. His chest heaved as he scanned the space. It looked like a nursery. A child's rocking horse sat in one corner, its paint peeling. A cradle rested near the window, shrouded in a moth-eaten blanket. On the walls, faded wallpaper showed scenes of lambs and flowers, though the images had warped with age, their shapes unsettling, unnatural. Daniel's eyes drifted to the cradle. Slowly, as if moved by an unseen hand, the blanket began to shift. Something stirred beneath it. The cradle creaked as it rocked, gently at first, then harder, the sound rising above the storm outside. The blanket slid away, and Daniel's stomach lurched. Inside lay a child, or what had once been a child. Its skin was grey, its eyes hollow sockets. Its mouth opened in a silent wail as it raised its tiny arms toward him. Daniel's scream tore from his throat. He stumbled back, slamming into a shelf of toys that clattered to the floor. The cradle tipped, crashing onto its side, but when Daniel dared look again, it was empty. The blanket lay still, untouched. He pressed a hand to his chest, heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. His mind screamed at him to keep moving. He tore from the nursery, slamming the door shut behind him. The hallway beyond was darker now, as though the house itself had thickened with night. The storm outside had quieted, but the silence inside was worse. It was heavy, oppressive, filled with whispers too faint to understand. Daniel staggered down the hall, searching desperately for another staircase, another door. His hand brushed against a wall, and he realised he was passing by portraits again, different ones this time. Not the stiff, formal paintings he'd seen downstairs. These were smaller, rougher, like sketches, and they were of strangers, dozens of faces, men and women, young and old. Each one painted with eerie detail, each one staring back at him with lifeless eyes. At the bottom of each portrait was a name. He read them aloud in a whisper as he walked. Elizabeth Morton, Charles Green, Amelia Wright. The names went on and on. He counted nearly 20 portraits. Then he stopped. The last portrait was of him. His face, pale and gaunt, staring out of the frame with hollow eyes. Below it, in neat letters, was written, Daniel Whitford, 2025. His stomach dropped. The paint was still wet. "No," he whispered, stumbling back. "No, no, no." The whispering voices rose louder, surrounding him, pressing into his skull. He clapped his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. "Stay, Daniel. You are one of us now." He turned and ran again, no longer caring where he went, just needing to escape. Doors flashed past him, endless corridors twisting, until he crashed through another set of heavy doors. The library. The room was vast, lined floor to ceiling with shelves of books. A balcony circled above, and a ladder leaned against one wall. Candles flickered on the tables, though no one had lit them. The air smelled of dust and something fouler, like decay. In the centre of the room stood a desk. On it lay another book, open as though waiting for him. Daniel's trembling hands flipped through the pages. Each one was filled with names, dates, and notes like a guestbook. The names matched the portraits he had seen, and at the very end, in the newest entry, was his own name, Daniel Whitford. Guest. Arrival, August 28, 2025. Departure. The dash after departure stretched across the page, empty. Daniel's vision blurred with panic. He shoved the book shut and staggered back, nearly knocking over a candle. A voice spoke from the shadows of the balcony above. "You've already signed, Daniel. The house has claimed you." Daniel's head jerked upward. Standing on the balcony was the boy from the portrait, Nathaniel Blackwood. His form flickered between solid and spectral, his face twisted with that same mocking smile. "You can't leave," Nathaniel said. "None of us can. We are bound to Blackwood Manor, and now, so are you." "Why me?" Daniel shouted, his voice cracking. "I don't belong here." Nathaniel tilted his head, eyes glinting. "The house chooses. It always chooses. A traveller lost in the storm. The perfect guest." Daniel's knees weakened. His mind reeled with the truth. He hadn't stumbled here by chance. The storm had led him. The gate had been open. The firewood had been waiting. The house had lured him. "No," Daniel whispered. "I won't stay. I won't." Nathaniel's smile widened. "You already are." The candles blew out all at once, plunging the library into darkness. Daniel spun, searching for an exit, when he saw them, the other guests. Dozens of pale, hollow-eyed figures emerging from between the shelves, moving silently, surrounding him. Their mouths opened, and a single word poured from all of them in unison. "Stay." In Stekan of lied. Daniel bolted for the nearest door, shoving through the swarm of spirits. Their hands brushed against him, icy and burning at the same time. He burst into another hallway, gasping, heart slamming against his ribs. The house groaned around him, as if laughing at his desperation. And then, faintly, he saw the faint outline of a door at the end of the corridor, smaller than the others, almost hidden in shadow. An exit. He sprinted toward it, hope rising in his chest. He grabbed the handle and pulled. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase that led downward into darkness. The cellar. His hope faltered, but the whispers behind him surged louder. He had no choice. He plunged into the dark, the door slamming shut behind him. The cellar smelled of damp stone and earth. His footsteps echoed as he descended, his hands brushing along the cold wall. The air grew colder, heavier, until he could see his breath in the gloom. At the bottom, he found himself in a vast underground chamber, and there, in the centre of the floor, was a circle carved into the stone etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. In the circle lay bones, piles of them, human bones. Daniel staggered back, bile rising in his throat. This was no ordinary cellar, this was a grave. And from the shadows, voices rose again, louder now, stronger. "Stay with us." Daniel's legs trembled as he stared at the circle of bones. The glow from the carved symbols pulsed faintly, like the beat of a heart. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go, no other doors, no windows, only the stone chamber and the endless dark. The whispers swirled around him, stronger here than anywhere else. "This is where it began," a voice said. Daniel spun, and his stomach dropped. Nathaniel Blackwood stood just beyond the glowing circle. His form flickered, half boy, half phantom, his eyes burning with cold fire. "What is this place?" Daniel demanded, though his voice shook. Nathaniel's lips curled into that familiar, mocking smile. "The heart of the house, the grave of its guests, every soul that entered and never left, rests here." Daniel shook his head, taking a step back. No, I'm not staying here. I'll find a way out." Nathaniel tilted his head, studying him with unsettling calm. There is no out. Once the house chooses, the guest remains. Look. He gestured, and the glow from the circle flared. The bones shifted, rattling against each other, forming shapes. For a moment, Daniel thought he saw the skeletons rise, dozens of them, standing tall, their empty eyes locked on him. "These are the guests who came before you," Nathaniel said. "They walked the halls as you did. They begged to leave, but the house bound them, and now they are part of it." The skeletons collapsed back into the heap, the glow dimming to its slow pulse. Daniel's breath came in short gasps. His hands shook. Why? Why does the house do this? Nathaniel's smile faded, replaced by something colder. Because it was made this way. My father built Blackwood Manor on cursed ground, a place where the dead did not rest. He thought he could control it, use it, but the house had its own hunger. It needed souls to sustain itself, and when my time came, his voice dropped. It claimed me first. Daniel's chest tightened. So you're trapped here too? Nathaniel's eyes glinted. We are all trapped here, and now, so are you. Daniel's stomach churned. He wanted to deny it, to scream that it wasn't true, but deep down he knew. From the moment he'd stepped through the gates, the house had woven him into its web. Still, a spark of defiance burned in him. No, he said firmly. If the house feeds on souls, then maybe there's a way to break it, a way to stop it. For the first time, Nathaniel's expression flickered. Amusement, perhaps, or pity. You think you can break what has stood for centuries. The house does not break. The house consumes. Daniel clenched his fists. Maybe it just hasn't met me yet. The boy's laughter rang out, hollow and cruel, echoing off the stone walls. Then try, guest, but know this, the house never loses. The glow from the circle surged brighter, and the whispers rose into a deafening chorus. The air pressed heavy on Daniel's chest, forcing him to his knees. He gasped for breath, his vision blurring as shadows coiled from the bones, reaching for him with clawed hands. No! He screamed, scrambling backward. His fingers brushed against something cold and metallic, a rusted lantern lying forgotten near the wall. He seized it, lifting it high. The shadows recoiled slightly from the faint glimmer of its broken glass. With trembling hands, Daniel pulled a match from his pocket. He struck it, and the lantern flared to life, its flame small but bright in the choking dark. The shadows shrieked, the glow of the circle flickered. For the first time, the whispers faltered. Nathaniel hissed, his face twisting. Fool! Do you think light will save you? But Daniel saw it. The symbols etched in the stone weren't just decorations. They were sigils, ancient and binding. The light made them waver, unstable. If he could disrupt the circle, maybe, just maybe, he could weaken the curse. He stumbled toward the glowing carvings, clutching the lantern. The whispers rose in fury, clawing at his mind, but he forced himself forward. He smashed the lantern against the stone, the glass shattering, the flames spilling across the symbols. The chamber erupted in light. The bones writhed, twisting and curling as the fire licked at them. The whispers became screams, piercing and furious. The entire manor seemed to shake, dust and stone raining from the ceiling. Nathaniel's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and furious. You don't know what you've done. Daniel shielded his face from the heat and smoke. Then maybe I've done the right thing. The ground cracked beneath him, the glowing circle breaking apart. The bones crumbled into ash. For a moment, silence fell deep, terrifying silence. Then, from above, came the sound of crashing wood. The house was groaning, collapsing, as though tearing itself apart. Daniel staggered toward the stairs, lungs burning, vision swimming. He forced himself upward, step by step, as the cellar behind him split open. He reached the door, shoving it open, stumbling into the hallway. The manor was falling. Portraits crashed from the walls. Chandeliers shattered. The whispers had turned into wails of anguish, echoing through every corridor. Daniel ran, his boots pounding against the shaking floor. He saw the entry hall ahead, the front door, still bolted, still locked. He hurled himself at it, pounding with his fists, screaming in desperation, "Let me out!" And then the bolts slid free. The door swung open. The storm outside had calmed. The night was clear, the moon shining down on the dead trees that lined the path. Daniel stumbled out, gasping, his body trembling. Behind him, Blackwood Manor shuddered, its windows glowing with eerie light. He watched as the walls buckled, the roof sagged, and the entire house seemed to sink into the ground. Within moments, it was gone. Nothing remained but the rusted gate and the empty path. Daniel collapsed onto the wet grass, his chest heaving. The silence of the night was almost unbearable after the horrors inside. He closed his eyes, relief washing over him. But then he heard it. A voice, soft, whispering, "Stay!" Daniel's eyes snapped open. He looked back at the ridge where the manor had stood. There was nothing, only shadows. And yet, the whisper lingered, not from the ridge, from within him. Daniel sat in the wet grass, his chest heaving, the night pressing heavy around him. Blackwood Manor was gone. He had seen it collapse, had felt the earth tremble beneath his feet. The storm had broken, the air was still, the moon shone silver over the dead trees. And yet the whisper lingered. Stay. It crawled beneath his skin, soft but insistent, like a memory that refused to fade. He pressed his hands over his ears, but it wasn't in the air anymore. It was inside him. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "I destroyed it. It's gone." But when he looked down, his hands weren't his own. For a heartbeat, they were pale and thin, the skin stretched too tightly over the bone. He blinked, and they were normal again. He staggered to his feet. He had to keep moving. Away from here, away from the ridge, away from the gate. He forced his legs forward, stumbling down the muddy road. The village wasn't far. If he could reach people, lights, noise, life, it would be over. The walk felt endless. His boots squelched in the mud, his breath came ragged, his body weak. The whisper followed with every step, faint but constant. "Stay, Daniel, stay." By the time he saw the flicker of lanterns in the distance, relief surged through him so powerfully he nearly wept. The village, civilization, salvation. He reached the first cottage, pounding on the door with his fists. After a moment, the door creaked open, and an old man peered out, his face lined and weary. "Please," Daniel gasped. I need help. The manor, Blackwood Manor, it's gone. It tried to keep me, but I escaped." The old man's eyes narrowed. His expression shifted, not to concern, but to confusion. "Blackwood Manor," he repeated slowly. "Yes," Daniel said, desperate. "The house on the ridge." The old man shook his head. "There's no house on the ridge, boy. Ain't been for years. Burned down. Oh, must have been 50 years ago now." Daniel froze. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible. I was just there. I saw it. His words faltered. The old man's face had changed. His eyes were pale, glassy, unblinking, his skin grey and thin. Daniel stumbled back. He turned, and the village was gone. The cottages had melted into shadow. The lanterns snuffed out. He was standing not in a street, but in a black void, endless and suffocating. And in the void, they surrounded him. The guests, dozens of pale figures, their hollow eyes fixed on him, their whispers rising into a single chorus. "Stay, stay, stay." Daniel's chest heaved. He turned in frantic circles, searching for escape, but there was none, only the endless void and the guests closing in. Nathaniel stepped forward, his smile cruel and triumphant. "You thought you could break it," he said softly. "But you cannot break what you are. You are part of the house now. You were always meant to be." Daniel shook his head violently. "No, I fought it. I destroyed it. You destroyed nothing," Nathaniel interrupted. "The house is not wood and stone. The house is us, the guests, and now you." The figures pressed closer, their whispers deafening. Daniel tried to run, but his legs felt heavy, bound by unseen chains. His hands trembled as he looked down, and this time there was no mistaking it. They were not his hands anymore. They were pale, skeletal, the skin withering before his eyes. "No," he screamed. "I'm not one of you. I'm not." Nathaniel's voice cut through his cries. "You are the last guest, Daniel. The house chose you, and now you will help it choose the next." The void collapsed in on itself. Daniel felt his body dissolve, pulled apart by shadows, his screams swallowed by the chorus of voices. And then silence. When the storm came again weeks later, another traveller lost his way on the road. Soaked to the bone, shivering with cold, he saw a shape on the ridge, a tall, looming manor, its windows glowing warmly against the night. The gate stood open, its iron hinges groaning in the wind. And at the door, waiting with a faint smile, was Daniel Whitford. "Welcome," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of eternity. "Blackwood Manor has been expecting you."